Welcome back to Texas Platinum, the last of the real water cooler shows on YouTube. I have a special guest today, DrewTAMU. I'm sure you recognize him. He's an Aggie. He's actually my big brother, and we're bringing him on today because Trevor and Matt are out. So we're bringing in the big guns. This guy's kind of a YouTube celebrity right now. He's popping off. So go check him out on YouTube. He's got some good Aggie content, good college football content. But we're going to talk about Texas A&M, really just the landscape of college football as we get into week 4, week 5. It's all starting to get really real now as we enter conference play. So I'm going to pass it over to Drew. You can introduce yourself and your channel, and then give us your thoughts on this season we've had so far from an A&M perspective, and your thoughts on the Longhorns.
Yeah, I don't know if you could have actually tell that I'm an Aggie just by looking at me. I don't know if it's the Johnny Manziel signed football, the metallic sign, the hat, the name. Yeah, there's an Aggie in your presence right now, Longhorns. And I know I'm invading your space, but here's the nice thing. We get to talk, we get to chop it up, but this time we actually get to play each other at the end of the year. So it's a little bit more substantial. It means something. And it's really cool to talk to you guys again and actually like be able to go on the field and do something about it. So that's nice. And yes, if you want to subscribe to me, I'll be your perpetual bookmark whenever you want to talk trash. I'll be your guinea pig. Appreciate all the support. And y'all subscribe to Texas Platinum. They do a really good job. But you want me to go ahead and start talking about this game? I mean, the heart attack, the wacky game, the wild one in Jerry World. I don't know if I'm looking forward to it. This game, I like to go to this game. It's a game that I enjoy being a part of. But I'm never really comfortable during a game with Arkansas at Jerry World. For whatever reason, if you guys have watched from afar, this game is wild. I don't know if you remember 2022, we had a play where KJ Jefferson dove from the 5-yard line trying to score. I don't know why he's diving from the 5-yard line. He fumbles. We have a guy pick it up. He gets corralled. He hands it to another guy. He runs 98 yards for a touchdown. Crazy stuff like that. The oink doink. The guy kicks a field goal to win the game, and it doinks and oinks off the top of the upright. Stuff like that happens in this game. So I'm excited for it, but I'm also terrified of it because I usually feel like A&M's the better team. A&M's like the natural favorite going into it because Arkansas is not at a place where they're getting the same talent that A&M is in. Although A&M hasn't done what we had hoped they would do with the talent that they have, you typically feel like A&M should be the stronger team, but it never really works out this way. I'm curious to hear what a Longhorn thinks looking at this game from afar, just your general thoughts whenever you see this lineup on the schedule.
Yeah, no, I agree. This game's always fun to watch because it's always fireworks and it gets weird. It gets weird very often. I remember that game vividly. I was at a bar in Knoxville uh, after like the Florida Tennessee game, and I remember watching the doink. I want to say I think it was the doink and the fumble you were talking about, and I was
That was
just
the same game.
yeah,
Yeah.
and I was just like, is this real life? I didn't realize what was going on. It's just crazy, and that always seems to happen. I remember watching Calzada take like the one and only loss y'all have had against them in the last decade, and that was a good game. But they had a good team that year. This year, I think this is probably the game I'm most looking forward to, besides obviously our game and Alabama Georgia this weekend. I think it's going to be a lot of fun to watch and really just get some clarity on the tiers of the SEC because A&M. Not so much Arkansas, but A&M's kind of sitting on that LSU Missouri tier potentially if they win this game and look good doing it, and they get Missouri the following week. So I think we'll get a lot of clarity on the hierarchy of the SEC because Arkansas, I mean, Bobby Petrino's there now, and their offense is a lot more dynamic. Taylon Green's kind of a wild card, the way he can run. It can kind of neutralize a defense. You know, if he's hot and you're not staying home, that could become problematic for any defense, even a good defense like A&M's. So I think it's going to be a really good matchup. Obviously, Marcel Reed, I think, will probably be the starter again because Wigman's still hurt, but you know more about that than I do, which is another storyline I want to see. But yeah, no, I think this is going to be a great game. Pittman needs this game bad. I mean, Elko needs it too, but Pittman, people are
Yeah.
writing him off, and he's honestly impressed. I would say he beat Auburn last week, which I mean, Auburn's terrible, but winning in that stadium's not easy all the time. So he did that. So I think this is a very just a great matchup, and I can't wait to see how it plays out.
Yeah, it's going to be a telling game. And you mentioned the SEC hierarchy. That might be a fun exercise to do real quick. Because when I talk these games, usually when I do my game previews, what I like to do is kind of talk about where these games kind of line up for each team's full schedule. Like we're both 3-1. We both have a signature win versus kind of a cellar dweller of the SEC. We got Florida. They got Auburn. But real quick, since this is a Texas channel, I think it might be pertinent to kind of go through that hierarchy and then talk about where Texas and Arkansas fit. So you mentioned that A&M might be in that Missouri LSU tier. It's possible. We'll start from the bottom going up. And at the bottom, it's usually Vandy, right? It's usually Vandy standing alone at the bottom. But Pavia and the boys have something brewing over there, almost upsetting Missouri last week, getting away by way of a couple Missouri missed field goals. So you can't even put Vandy down there. I think safely at the bottom, I think there is a single team at the bottom. And I think it's the team that you're going to be playing around with this weekend. I think it's Mississippi State. We'll talk about them more in a second, but I feel bad for them, man, because unfortunately, their downfall has kind of been triggered by the death of a legend in Mike Leach. And they're kind of, having to deal with a full reset there. They haven't hit the portal like some programs have in the transition portion of the whole deal where you get a new coach and they bring players, and they didn't really do that under Jeff Lebby. Curious to see how that goes over the next few years. I think they're squarely at the bottom. You'll have fun with them this weekend if you consider that fun. But then I think that true like kind of bottom competitive tier, if you will, I don't even know if it's competitive. It's got to be Florida and Auburn, the two teams that we both beat. It's got to be those two teams. So we're both kind of going in there with that as our measuring stick. So that's what makes this game kind of interesting. And then above that, I think I would put the what the hell is going on tier right above there. I always like to call that a tier early in the year, like what the hell are these teams? And that would be probably Kentucky, throw them in there. I think they showed some stuff versus Georgia they can maybe build on defensively. I would put Arkansas in that tier. I would put A&M in that tier. I would put OU in that tier. South Carolina is probably in that tier of these teams that are either set to kind of. I don't think this is like a permanent tier. This is kind of like that middle ground where this portion of the year will kind of separate the haves from have-nots, or the will-be's to will-nots, if you want to be more specific there. And then above that, I think you have that LSU, Missouri, probably pretty good, but kind of teetering and like could still go either way, kind of. And then above that, you have the top tier. Y'all are in it. Tennessee's in it. I think Georgia and Bama are definitely in it. Ole Miss is in it. And that's where things kind of stand. So y'all are probably at the top right now up there with Tennessee, I would say, just from eye test alone. And y'all are going top to bottom there. So that should be fun for y'all. But this Arkansas A&M game, super intriguing. I mean, measuring stick game, if there ever was one, I think. I think it's really going to kind of dictate the rest of the season for both teams. And I would agree with you and say that Arkansas has more pressure in this game because of the Sam Pittman situation. Things went south after that Starkle year. And, that's not a game that feels good for us because obviously Starkle was our old guy, goes there, beats us. But things have gone south, and they're off to a pretty good start to the year. They really could be 4-0 right now because that Oklahoma State game, they blew it 5 different times. And this is one of their winnable games. They play y'all, they play Tennessee, they play Ole Miss, they play a bunch of tough teams. They play Missouri, LSU, but they also play South Carolina. I think they have another non-con game. They could rack up some wins. They could maybe get to 6 or 7 wins if they do really, really well. And that would be a signature season for Sam Pittman when things aren't going well, and could really give their program some momentum to really start building over the next few years, especially with Bobby Petrino now there. Things are looking up for that offense. Talking about their offense, and it's probably because I'm fixated on Arkansas right now because we're playing them. I don't know about you, but I think Taylor Green's one of the most fascinating players in the country right now. It's really, really, really good, but also really inconsistent. It's a guy that you can never, ever relax against, even if he's cold, even if he's throwing balls to defenders, even if he's throwing balls high behind players, throwing interceptions. He had 2 interceptions versus Auburn, but you would still say they played a pretty good offensive game, all things considered. He's really big. He's 6'6", 230, kind of like a very, 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 very poor man's Vince Young. And he's good in the open field with the ball in his hands. He's dynamic. I mean, he's a long strider. He messes with angles and the perception of defenders in pursuit because at that length, he can kind of cut on a dime, a lot like Vince Young could. That's kind of the one comparison there is like the open field ability. I don't even know. I don't think he's that good, but he's, somewhat comparable in style. And A&M's had trouble bringing people down on the open field. A&M's had trouble outside when you're away from that elite defensive line that A&M has. That back seven built from the portal under a new staff has kind of lacked consistency in a lot of areas, not been the quickest in the processing speed when it comes to recognizing plays and recognizing what's going on, kind of sifting through what's eye candy and what the play is. So a guy like Taylor Green, comboed with a Jaquindon Jackson, comboed with some passing upside. I mean, they're really good at the explosive plays, kind of like Jalen Milroe. You think of Milroe, a guy we'll talk about later in the show, a guy that's a really dynamic runner, a guy that can hit the short passes. a guy that can't really throw the intermediate ball very well, but a guy that can throw the ball really deep and put it in a catchable area, usually. Milrow's better than Taylor Green, but Taylor Green has that upside and that profile. And for what A&M's kind of shown versus Bowling Green, that game where we kind of struggled getting off the field defensively, not necessarily giving up a ton of points, but just allowing fourth down conversions, allowing sporadic explosive plays. Both of their touchdowns were 40+ yard plays. A player like Taylor Green really scares you. He has the ability to extend plays and throw on the run. I don't know if you saw it, but he had an amazing 60-yard touchdown pass. I'm talking ball in the air for 60 yards to Isaiah Satenya on a contested catch that was really well placed ball at 60 yards. They can do stuff like that, and they can just pull it out of the bag. And I think, Bobby Petrino's going to drop a great game plan where they run the ball, and throw some play actions and really take some shots against A&M, test an inexperienced secondary, at least inexperienced together, because you have some players with experience from other places like Will Lee, a guy that y'all are familiar with from Kansas State. They're going to test us a lot with that offense. And I think the defense at A&M, ton of potential, really promising players. I really like what they've built in the portal, but it's early stages, it's early days, and it's definitely not clicking yet. And that's somewhat to be expected under a new staff. But what this game means to A&M, it's a chance to stay alive. You have one loss right now to a Notre Dame team where you didn't play up to your standard. You don't think. Hopefully you didn't. Hopefully that's not the standard. And this is a winnable game. And you have some more manageable games down the road. But if you want to overachieve in Mike Elko's year one, this is a game you have to win because you have Missouri next. You get your bye. You get Mississippi State. Then you have LSU. If you can get through that stretch with somehow undefeated or with a loss, you can feel pretty good about what the season might become. But if you lose to Arkansas, I don't know if you're going to split or beat both or lose to both Missouri and LSU. So it's a game that really is must win for A&M's year one, but for Arkansas, it's must win for Sam Pittman. So that's why I say it means there's a little bit more pressure on Arkansas there. You talked about Wigman and Reed. Look, if Wigman's healthy, I think Reed's been really good, but I don't think he's done enough for me to say, okay, no, we got to ride Reed. We kind of felt like that might be the case after Florida, but after seeing him versus Bowling Green, I think the game kind of forced him to show more of where he's kind of still learning. And that was kind of more revealed versus Bowling Green. Whereas with Florida, we just kind of ran the ball to milk the clock the whole second half because it was working. So you didn't really test Reed. So if Wigman's 100%, I'm throwing Wigman out there right now. But Reed has a chance right now to solidify himself against that Arkansas defense that has some promise, but is largely unproven because their best defensive game really has been against Arkansas, Pine Bluff, and Auburn with Peyton Thorne and Hank Brown. So I don't know how you feel about the A&M quarterback situation. I know you kind of like Wigman. What do you make of Reed and Wigman, and who would you pick if you were, in the A&M coaching room?
Yeah, I think I agree. If Wegman's healthy, you got to go with him because I mean Wegman's still. I know he's not young, but he hasn't played a lot of meaningful football. He's dealt with injuries. Whenever he has played, he's looked pretty good besides the Notre Dame game. So I think you got to stick with the guy and go through the lumps if he can stay healthy. Because at a certain point you have to abandon him if he can't stay healthy. But if he's good to go, I think he's still inexperienced enough where you want to ride him out and let him progress, let him deal with some adversity, kind of like Quinn did as a freshman at Texas. I mean, he had a lot of bad games and a lot of bad moments and a lot of good moments too. And you just Sark just didn't even think about mentioning for Hudson Card. He just rode with him the entire time when he was healthy, and it pays off down the road. And year one, I think with Mike Elko, and you can say the same thing about Marcel Reed too, because Reed's younger than Wigman, I want to say. And
Yeah, he's a year younger.
but I think there needs to be some clarity here, and this game might give you some clarity on who your guy is. And once you make that decision, just go with them and let them suffer through turnovers and whatever they deal with as young players. But I think Wigman gives you more of an upside down the road. So I would go with Wigman. He won a job originally, he's the guy for a reason, at least coming into the season. So
Yeah.
I think
I'm,
Wigman deserves
I,
that.
I would agree with you. I would agree with you. And for whatever it's worth, the depth chart has continued to list Wigman as quarterback one, indicating that maybe that decision hasn't been made yet to make a change. And I think he's truly hurt for whatever that's worth. I know there's a lot of dialogue out there about, oh, A&M needs to make a decision. A&M needs to just pick a starter. I don't think there's a decision to be made yet. I just don't think Wigman's healthy enough to play right now. I think maybe there's a world where you could force him to play. But when you have a quarterback like Marcel that can go in there and take that pressure off of him throwing with an injured throwing shoulder, I think you take that option and you let the quarterback get to 100%. So, yeah, totally agree. The only thing that's kind of there to me is if Reed does progress quickly and he really starts taking this thing over, I think he gets the next 2 games. I think if we see Wigman, it'll be after the bye week. I think Reed has a chance to solidify himself. I think it's an outside chance. He'd have to really impress and really play really, really well. But if he goes out and he beats Arkansas and Missouri, it's going to be hard to get Wigman back out there just because why change it if you start playing really well? But it's all up in the air right now. I have A&M winning the game in a very, very close game. I think my score was 31-27 A&M. I expect the same kind of wacky game. Keys to the game, I think for Arkansas, it's just making Reed uncomfortable. Versus Bowling Green, he showed that he's not the best decision maker under pressure or even just seeing a blitz. Right now, he's kind of getting happy feet or getting tuck happy and not really going through his progressions. Now, we're hoping that can improve week to week because he's so young. And for A&M, it's going to be kind of the same thing because Taylor Green and Marcel Reed are kind of comparable, just athletes, dynamic in the open field, strong arms, but not really great at going through the progressions. I think you got to really contain Green, but also not, and also pressure him, but you can't sacrifice your contain in doing that. So it's going to be an interesting game, man. Similar quarterbacks, neither perfect, but both have tremendous upside, can make you pay. It'll be a fun one. Do you have a score prediction for it or a winner prediction?
That's tough. I really am split on this one. I think if I had to bet on it, I would bet on A&M. But I envision this being like, yeah, a slugfest, and I don't know. I think A&M wins it down the stretch, but yeah, I think I agree with the keys that you mentioned. From Arkansas's perspective, but I'm excited to see this Taylor Green guy because I saw him against Arkansas Pine Bluff, and Longhorn fans, we're gonna have to deal with this guy in a few weeks in Vietnam. So
Yeah.
we need to be familiar with him because he seems like it could be a problem if he's hot. So yeah, I agree. I would bet on A&M, but I think it's a coin flip, and that's what makes it fun. That's what I'm looking forward to watching on Saturday.
Yeah, and I would end on this. I would say that if Arkansas can figure it out and play a game consistently without making mistakes and without just kind of throwing the ball away with the quarterback, getting their receivers involved, I think they can hang with a lot of teams. They have the pieces. Their O-line has improved from last year, and obviously Sam Pittman's an offensive line guy. It's a new group built from the transfer portal. So there's a lot of learning going on. I think their biggest issue now is communication and blitz pickup kind of stuff. But if they can figure it out for a game, there are a lot of teams that they'll be able to surprise, I think. So very scary for A&M. Obviously, I think a lot can be said for A&M. A&M's not making the big mistakes, but they're just not playing clean across the board. They're not making game-altering mistakes like Arkansas was. They just haven't gotten things clicking. So it'll be very intriguing, very much a crossroads kind of a game.
Yeah, I can't wait. I know Bobby Petrino's got something up his sleeve for this one. But
I know.
all right.
Piggy's been telling me about that. Piggy's been telling me Petrino's the key. Petrino's the key. I know. I know.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see. But all right. Well, I guess we'll go to the Texas Hail State game. Really, not much to say. I think I just kind of get your thoughts on really Texas, Arch Manning, Quinn Ewers, just your general thoughts on Texas, and if you think we can cover against Hail State, because Hail State's in the dumpster, like you said, they're at like the bottom tier of the SEC, and it doesn't look like they're going to have any progress on that right now because Blake Shapen's out for a year now. They're starting quarterback, so they're kind of just in a bad spot in year one with Jeff Levy. I do think that's a good hire though. So if they can wait that out, that could be something down the road. I like this veer and shoot offense, but should be Texas big this weekend. Any thoughts on the Longhorns? Quinn Ewers, Arch Manning. Any thoughts?
Yeah, and maybe the biggest affirmation about Levy being a good coach is just how OU looks offensively right now. But what's the spread at? It's like 39.5 right now.
Yeah, something like that.
I should bet this game because y'all are covering that easily. I mean, they got blown out at home by Toledo. They look terrible. I hate to see it. We talked about it already, why they're like this. I've been impressed with Texas. I mean, I'm an Aggie, but I'm not gonna, blow smoke and say, "Oh, it's fake. Oh, you haven't played nobody." You've done what you're supposed to do against everybody. Michigan looked good versus USC. Y'all controlled that game. Y'all just played your brand of football, dictated the game, and just had a consistent performance and finished them. Texas is good. I mean, make no two mistakes. Make no mistake about it. Is what I'm trying to say. Good team, best team on our schedule right now, and I understand what I'm looking at. It's one of the best teams in the country. And when you go up against a team that's just deficient right now, 22 new starters on the team compared to last year, they lost all 22 starters. That's insane. in this portal era, they didn't bring enough in to like supplement that. I mean, this feels like a 63-7 kind of a game, honestly. Even with Arch Manning, Arch Manning took some lumps last week, wasn't perfect versus ULM, but you're glad he did, right? You're glad he did that versus a team like ULM and had the full game to himself and kind of worked through things live action. And he'll improve off of that. And Mississippi State would lose to a lot of G5 teams right now, including Bowling Green. So I have y'all covering 63-7. That's my score.
Yeah, no, I think I lean to us covering as well. I like that score. That'd be nice, putting up 60 in our first SEC game. It's kind of anticlimactic. I wish they gave us like Florida or Georgia. Like, I guess not Georgia before you, but I
How
wish we
about a
had,
nice, juicy South Carolina?
yeah, something more respectable. You know, they gave us the bottom of the barrel for our SEC debut, and that's fine. I mean, it's nice to have like a runway to OU and Georgia, which is like we're very
Yeah.
thankful for. But yeah, I just want to see us play a clean game, and we've knock on wood been good with the injury bug. Besides running back, which is completely decimated right now. Jaden Blue's back, but I think Trey Wisner's good now too. But I'd like to keep those guys healthy this week, and I'd like to see us get rid of we have a lot of offensive line penalties, which we didn't have last year, and it's a veteran O line. Just like a lot of sloppy holds and false start that's uncharacteristic of Kyle
Yeah.
Flood's line. So I'd like to see us clean that up because you're going to need this more discipline against Georgia, of course, and OU. So,
So
but
is Sark using more receivers this year? He's digging deeper into the bag this year, right?
yeah, for sure, he's never used this many receivers. We probably play like six or seven consistently.
Yeah, I'll say the one thing that has kind of made y'all more impressive than I thought y'all would look early in the year is that they kind of clicked right away. I thought that would be a process, especially we talked about this in the offseason, how Quinn took a while to develop chemistry with his last couple of regimes, and it kind of worked right away. And credit to Sark for getting that done. It just seems like they're picking up right where y'all left off last year in that room that was so impressive last year, getting a lot of guys involved, and guys have looked more impressive than I thought early in the year.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, Ryan Mingos look great. Golden, Bond, they're all rowing the boat in the same direction, and it's kind of nice that the receptions are spread so nicely. Like everybody's getting theirs, except for DeAndre Moore. He finally got a touchdown though against UTSA, but everyone's involved and everyone's contributing, so everyone's seemingly happy on the surface, which is good. Uh,
Yep.
and yeah, I'm excited to get after an SEC team for the first time, but it's like I said, anticlimactic. But I hope we cover. So I want to see Brandon Walker's Twitter account go through it on Saturday. I mean, he's probably used to it at this point, but
I think he's reached acceptance already.
yeah, definitely. Well, awesome. Yeah, I'm excited for it. But the main event of this weekend, and I'll transition us now, is Bama versus Georgia. And I know we're not Bama or Georgia guys, so we don't have the greatest insight on these teams and their rosters and the dynamics. But this is a huge game. It's kind of been the SEC's biggest rivalry. Bama LSU, Bama Georgia over the last decade, and this one feels
Most consequential matchup, right? I think.
yeah, that's a better way to put it. But it's turned into a rivalry. It's a border state, and it's
Yeah.
always fun. And we haven't seen Georgia come to Bryant Denny really this whole time. They haven't been there, I don't think, at all. And realignment has kind of allowed this to happen this year. And it's like a top five matchup. DeBoer now against Kirby Smart, and Georgia's favored in this game by a couple points, but no one really knows about either of these. Like we know that these are really good teams, but I feel like this game could go so many different ways, and that's what makes it exciting. What are your early thoughts on Bama, Georgia?
Yeah, and it's important to y'all. Y'all are playing Georgia. That's looking like one of the games of the year right now. And I'd be curious to hear what you prefer the outcome to be, knowing that. But yeah, I think this part of the year for most teams, very few do you not need this for. But I think this week 4 to 6 area is where teams kind of start to settle into where they're going to be. And this very much feels like that kind of game. This feels like a scaled up version of A&M Arkansas, where I think Georgia showed some vulnerability versus Kentucky. Carson Beck couldn't get anything going on the road. Now, was it the road factor? Was it something that Kentucky did? I don't know, because they're going on the road again against a more talented defense. So is he going to improve on what he just showed 2 weeks ago? Is he going to be clicking again, getting guys involved? They don't really have a running game right now. It's been through the air, their success before that game, but they've only played 3 games each. This is a small sample size time of year, and they both had an early bye. So you're right. We don't know that much about what makes these teams go or what they really want to be. Actually, I think with Bama, we kind of know what they want to be. Kalen DeBoer's done a great job doing what great offensive coaches do, and that's just adapting to personnel. Because last year, obviously, it was the Penix and those receivers show. They were just basically an air raid kind of an offense. Now they're adapting to one of the most dynamic quarterbacks in the country with Milroe. They scheme players out of the game. They're going to read players out. They're going to run a lot of zone read. They're going to take their deep shots to those great receivers at Bama. And they're really going to test a really, really good Georgia defense. Now, if this game was at Georgia, I think I would pretty confidently pick Georgia. But after seeing Carson Beck on the road and seeing how good DeBoer's been progressing with this Bama offense, I'm starting to lean Bama, and I'm gonna pick Bama in this game. I don't know if I have a score. I'll throw something out there. I think it's not it's kind of a mid-tier scoring game. I would say it's something like 31 to 24, 31-27. I'll use the same score I used for Arkansas A&M game because, like I said, it's the scaled up version of that game. I could be wrong, obviously. Georgia has probably maybe the best defense in the country. What they're averaging, like giving up a touchdown a game through 3 games. And that's a Clemson team that has since showed out after that game. And Georgia just played lights out in that game from top to bottom, especially in the second half. Yeah, it's a very revealing game. It's a very, very much an information gathering game. I think this game will largely kind of dictate the top of the SEC because I feel like the loser of this game could end up losing 2 or 3 more games unless it's just a really, really close competitive game, in which case you could see them potentially rematching later. I don't know. I'm excited to learn more about both of these teams and with such a small sample size and the relative newness on Bama's side of things and on Georgia's side of things. So it'll be fun, man. I'm really, really looking forward to it and just kind of figuring out the hierarchy of this SEC. How about you?
Yeah, no, I agree. Yeah, that's a good point you made because especially from Georgia's perspective, if they drop this game, you look at the rest of their schedule, they still got Tennessee.
Tough.
They play at Texas and at Ole Miss. They could pick up another loss or two and miss the playoff with 3 losses at that point. So this is a big game for Georgia and Bama, of course, too. Bama's got a tough schedule as well. But yeah, no, I agree. It's my brain's telling me that Kirby Smart is not going to lose to the new kid on the block in the SEC. DeBoer's not been an SEC coach ever, but it is Kalen DeBoer who just seemingly just wins wherever he goes automatically every time. And we saw that firsthand. He's beaten Sark twice now when they've played recently. And that stadium's gonna be rocking. It's at home. Bryant Denny, Brian Williams is a really good receiver for Alabama, probably the most dynamic receiver on the field. Georgia's still struggling to find their guy to target with Ladd gone and obviously Bowers. And I don't know. Georgia's O line's also been dealing with some injuries, but I do think they're pretty cleared to go this weekend. So that should be an improvement there for Carson Beck and the running game. But I just can't. I don't want to pick against Kirby Smart because he's the old guard now of the SEC, and that defense is still elite. I mean, they just bodied Clemson so easily it seemed like, and Clemson turns out to be pretty good. At least they've gotten better, but Clemson looks really good recently, and Bama struggled against USF, and they beat Wisconsin, who's good, not good. They beat Wisconsin, so I mean that's a good win.
Yeah. On the road, I mean, somewhat of a talented team.
Yeah, so that makes it kind of it's a resume booster for sure. So that kind of gives me some hesitancy. And Milroe is more than serviceable. He's a good quarterback. Is he great? I don't know about that, but he's good and he can cause problems with how dynamic he is. So I'm going to take Georgia here. Mainly, and you asked me this earlier, my thoughts as a Longhorn fan. I want Georgia to win really bad, and so does every other Longhorn fan on the planet because we want 1 versus 2 prime time in a couple weeks, October 19th in DKR. And if Bama wins this game, prime time's going to probably be at Tennessee versus Alabama because that'll be a top 5. Bama will jump Georgia, and then it's the same week. It'll be in Knoxville, so that they're going to take the spotlight. We might get the 2:30 slot for Texas Georgia, which is blasphemy. So we really need Georgia to win, and I think they're going to do it. I trust that staff. I trust their defense, and I don't trust Carson Beck, but I'm gonna have to trust him. So give me the dogs. But man, it's gonna be awesome. Chris Fowler, prime time. That's gonna be a spectacle. I can't wait. I haven't really sat down and watched much football, like prime time night games this year, because Texas has like had, scheduling. We've had night games, or whenever we had a day game, it was like nothing good at prime time. So this is like the first big time game of the year that I'm gonna sit down and watch from start to finish, and I'm so excited to just take it all in.
Yeah, me too. It seems like the scheduling's been weird the first 3 weeks. Something to keep an eye on is Michael Williams for Georgia. That defensive end position is going to be really, really important, I think, in all the reads that Bama's going to equip to kind of get a numbers advantage against the defense. And that's a really good defensive end that could really make them pay in those reads. Just kind of guy that can maybe wreck some of those plays. So that's something to keep an eye on the injury front, since you mentioned some of those offensive line injuries that Georgia's been dealing with. But they both had a bye to recover.
Yeah.
So they should get each other's full attention, full go, full game plan. It's going to be amazing, man. I'm with you there. Going to definitely sit down and watch this whole game.
Oh yeah. All right. So we got looks like 5 minutes left on the Zoom call. So I'm gonna ask you a few more quick hitters, and then we can get out of here for the night. But Oklahoma got smoked by Tennessee last weekend, and I didn't get to watch it live because we were playing, like I said. But went back and watched the highlights. That offense is really bad. Like the talking points are accurate. Maybe like underselling how bad that offense is, and now they have a game against Auburn, who also is terrible on offense, and it's in Jordan Hare, so something's got to give. But uh, I love watching OU their downfall because they've been so good for so long. They're a great program historically. They're always good, and it's nice to see them have their Charlie Strong era potentially right now. So I just what are your thoughts on that game and OU in general? And yeah,
Yeah, man. I don't know. Does the loser of this game start getting hot seat talks?
Auburn for sure. OU, I don't know. They've sold themselves on Venables, but it's gonna get kind of
Yeah.
weird.
Yeah, that's so weird with Freeze, man, because it's like they've been talking about patience. They've been talking about building his team. The team is built for the future. They're putting all of their NIL and all their attention on recruiting rather than portal. And it's just surprising for me to hear the talks already coming up about Freeze. I think I'm leaning OU this game because look, OU at least can like hang their hat on a solid defense. Not maybe not top tier, but a really, really good, sturdy SEC defense. Auburn has some talent on defense, but it's not great. It's not a great defense. And neither quarterback is really great. I mean, what are we? It's Jackson Arnold's bench. It's Michael Hawkins' time. I just would trust that best aspect of this game, which is that OU defense in this game. I would lean to OU really shutting Auburn down. I just don't see a way that Auburn's able to move the ball consistently. I think OU can probably piece some things together. Hawkins showed some promise, man. He can do some stuff off script, just really not even by play design, just scrambling, extending plays. Way more accurate and took better care of the ball than Arnold. As long as they don't make the critical mistakes, I think OU can win this game somewhat comfortably, even though it's at Jordan Hare. I just really, really low on this Auburn team right now. No matter what they do at quarterback, they can't go to the next guy. They've already tried doing that twice or 3 times on the year already. There's nowhere else for them to turn. So I think this is going to be a better defense than what they saw last week in Arkansas. And Arkansas held them to 7 points, but that's off the heels of 4 turnovers. They might do that again. They might have another 4 turnover game against a better defense. So I would just lean to the best position group in the game by a significant margin, in my opinion. That's the OU defense. I'm going to lean OU on the road here, and I guess the hot seat talks begin or really pick up fire.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think Sooners win this one. I mean, OU still's got a lot of those old dudes on this team, on defense at least, that were on that team last year that won a lot of games. And Auburn really just has been trash for a while now, and I just don't think they know how to win yet. I think OU will take that last loss pretty personally, especially on defense, and play a good game. And I think Hawkins is dynamic enough to outscore Auburn with OU's defense helping a lot, of course. But yeah, I kind of want OU to win, I guess, so they can be ranked in the Cotton Bowl. But also, it'd be fun to watch them just lose to Auburn too. So it's a win-win for me. Real quick before we go, who is the head coach at Florida next year? I want to hear your thoughts on this.
Yeah, it's going to be Jimbo Fisher. You see, he's looking for a job right now, and I don't think West Virginia's hiring anytime soon. I have no idea. I really don't know. And it's so early to begin these talks, and that's why Billy Napier still has a job right now. You can't just bail on him in the middle of the year, hand the sinking ship to someone else, then they sink, let alone the fact that there's not any options right now. So I really don't even know who it's going to be. Is it time to pull the Glenn Schumann card? Is it time to go deep into the primetime assistant coaches bag? I really don't know where Florida goes right now. It's such a tough situation for them because no matter what they do right now, this season the schedule is still what it is. And next year, I don't know. I know there are talks of Lane Kiffin, but is Lane Kiffin going to leave what's been a pretty good situation at Ole Miss? He's the portal king there. Will that just, copy paste over to Florida? Maybe. There's the way you think about that happening, if it's going to happen, is that Ole Miss has all their eggs in this 2024 basket. And after this year's done, they lose a lot of players. Maybe he's ready for that next restart. And Florida's a bigger, more prestigious, probably more wealthy program than Ole Miss. So maybe there's a chance it's Lane Kiffin. I don't know, man. It's tough times for Florida. Do you have a feel any other names besides Lane?
I kind of agree with you. I think you were kind of joking when you said Jimbo Fisher, but I think they went the G5 route with Billy Napier, and it's so bad that they're gonna not even consider that this time around. And if they don't get Lane Kiffin, which is like you said, not an easy pull, they're gonna look around and Gus Malzahn maybe if UCF's good this year. But Jimbo's a guy you could get for cheap, relatively cheap, and he's won a national championship. He's going to recruit really well. Florida struggled recruiting at a big boy SEC level, surprisingly, and he'll get that in order, and you'll be at least 8-4, 9-3, competitive, and able to win a big game every now and then against Tennessee or I don't know about Georgia, but win a big game. So I think that'd be a decent hire, honestly. And Jimbo, he's not that old, so I think that'd be a good floor hire, and I think he would take that.
Yeah. Jimbo will get talent. Jimbo will find a way to put a team together. It's just a matter of he can, adapt to some newer stuff. But yeah, it's probably going to be the same pool of names you've been seeing in the last few. You look at the Whittinghams, you look at the Kansas schools, you look at all those kind of Big 12 schools that have been doing pretty well recently. But I think Florida's really going to want to splash. So yeah, I think Lane would be the main target if you're asking a Florida fan.
Yeah, yeah, I know. And they got a interesting game coming up next week against UCF in the swamp. They can't lose to UCF. That'll do it. That'll get them fired midseason. And I know UCF's a decent team with KJ Jefferson and Malzahn, but just the optics of losing to Central Florida, a team that's so beneath them, at least in their mind, and that's just a PR nightmare, and it very well could happen. I mean. Florida's a lot of fun to watch this year. Same with Florida State for like the wrong reasons because it's kind of fun. It's like a train wreck. You want to just keep watching it. But I will say Graham Mertz was cooking against Hail State. So if they just roll with Graham Mertz, maybe they can salvage something. I know Hail State's terrible, but Graham Mertz is a decent quarterback when he's in a rhythm. I mean, he played pretty well against A&M in spurts.
He
Would you agree?
did. He did. He was definitely the better quarterback. They should have stopped playing Lagway because Mertz was finding some success.
Yeah. So I don't know. If they roll with Mertz, there's a chance they can win that game and gets a little bit of momentum before the back half of the year when then they run into all the monsters. So either way, it's not looking good for Napier and but yeah, Jimbo to Gainesville. You heard it here first from DrewTAMU.
We're on it early.
We're on it early. Okay, let's keep it in the SEC. I got one more really big topic to talk about. I mean, Tennessee looked great last week against OU, and I'm big on Vol Twitter. I don't know why. Like my Twitter algorithm's heavily Vol Twitter right now, and they swear they're about to win the national championship. Colin Coward went out and said that Tennessee was a national championship this year after seeing what they did against the OU, and I want to get your thoughts on that because I do think Heupel's built a great program. I think they're very good, but are they Georgia, Ohio State level yet? Do you think, or are we kind of putting too much into that OU game?
Well, we're gonna find out because I got to play Bama and Georgia this year.
Yeah.
They were one of my playoff picks before the season, before seeing them play this year, and they've proven me right so far, and probably exceeded my expectations. Probably because Nico Alamiliava, 6 syllables. He's been better than I thought he would early in the year. He kind of, showed some promise in the bowl game, but I thought he showed a lot of youth in that game, holding on to the ball too long, a little bit trigger shy. But he's been really good running this Josh Heupel offense to the T so far. To me, I'm not going to go as far as Colin Cowherd right now and say they're a natty pick. They're a playoff lock right now. They could lose their two toughest games on the schedule still and still make it to the playoff with what they've done already, with the eye test that you can only assume will continue, and the fact that they're going to beat Arkansas, Florida, Kentucky, Mississippi State, UTEP, and Vandy. They've already done, that early heavy lifting by blowing out NC State, handling OU on the road. They just got to not slip up and continue to get better and better. And I think they will with such a young quarterback, but they have everything you would need top to bottom, a great front seven. Secondary, hasn't really been tested yet. Has it? NC State, are they that good? Maybe that's a question mark, but who's really going to test that on the schedule? So, yeah, I mean, I think it's safe to say that they're in a good place right now. They'll improve over the course of the year, wherever they may be deficient. Maybe that secondary. They're a solid team, man. I would put them in my top three right now, honestly, if I had to make a top three. I think my top three right now, go crazy. Texas, Tennessee, Miami. That's my top three.
Miami. That's an interesting one. They play Friday night, so we'll get to see that soon. That's an interesting game against Virginia Tech. I mean, the old Miami would find a way to make that game ugly and kind of scary, I feel like, at least last year and years prior. But if they're legit, I think they'll roll against Virginia Tech at home Saturday or Friday night. So I haven't watched them at all. I watched the highlights of the Florida game, but Cam Ward, he's a San Antonio guy, I want to say, came from Incarnate Word, a
Is that
Heisman
true?
favorite
Wow.
right now. Yeah, he played at Incarnate Word originally. Where Calzada's at now, by the way. But
Yeah, he's been good.
yeah, a lot of Heisman hype around him. They have a nice schedule, so they might just by default get to the playoff and just have a great season. But I mean, give them credit; they're blowing everyone out, so they might be the real deal too. I mean, Cristobal's a good coach; he's great at acquiring talent, so that'll be fun to watch. What are your thoughts on Ohio State? Because you don't have them in your top three. They haven't played anyone. It's just so hard to get a read on them. I know they're elite talent everywhere, of course, but Ryan Day's he's kind of plateaued at like I don't know, tier 1B in college football, at least the last 3 years. So can he break through this year?
Yeah, I don't know. Been impressive so far. Probably a little bit better than I thought they would look. Need to be tested. You got to beat Michigan. Lots more to be gained in learning about Ohio State still. But yeah, man, I'm high on Miami. Similar thoughts to Tennessee actually going into the year. Just solid across the board. Again, the only question mark on the team to me was their secondary, and it really won't be tested. I don't think. There's no one on the schedule that really scares me, so that's something we probably won't find out until maybe an ACC championship if they play Clemson, something like that. Miami's there. I think Ohio State's a virtual lock. I actually think Penn State's schedule is super easy. They're a lock to me, even though they were shaky versus Bowling Green. But maybe Bowling Green's good. Okay, they scared two ranked teams, two Power Five teams, an SEC team, and a Big Ten team on the road. Maybe Bowling Green's the real deal. Maybe we're looking at Bowling Green as like a ranked, G5 champion at the end of the year. But Ohio State is too early. Those are some other teams I think are locks. Yeah, man. We need to learn a lot more about Ohio State, in my opinion.
Yeah, it just feels like this whole early season has been there's not been a bunch of big time top teams matching up in the non-con this year, and maybe that's realignment that caused that. But I
Yeah.
feel like the next couple of weeks, especially October 12th, I mean Ohio State, Oregon, Texas, OU, there's a bunch of good games
Yeah.
on October 12th, and it
I
really
was gonna say it's heating up right around there. We'll start getting those big questions answered, probably.
yeah, for sure. And then some this weekend too. I mean,
Yeah,
Arkansas
for sure.
and Bama, Georgia. But cool. Anything else you want to touch on before we get out of here? Oklahoma State's been a letdown. I don't know what Mike Gundy's doing these days. They're just always bad, but like kind of good. And it's just like he used to have some really good teams back in the day, back when he was like had Mason Rudolph and those guys, and before that too. But they've just they got waxed by Utah at home, and not waxed, but they just got soundly beaten. And it's just kind of sad because like you were high on them before the season, and Ollie Gordon's there, that whole O line still there, like a bunch of 25-year-old grown men, Alan Bowman, and they're just I don't know. It's just I would hate it if I was an Oklahoma State fan because you just don't know what to do because you're not going to get any better than Mike Gundy, and he just
Yeah.
he had a golden
I'll
opportunity this year.
I'll say this, and maybe you correct me here if I'm wrong. I do feel like Gundy teams typically play their best football late in the season,
It's
and
true.
their home stretch on their year is not easy, but manageable. It's going to be a movie to watch that we won't be watching. We'll be busy watching other games, but them going to Colorado the last weekend of the year is going to be really fun. But Ollie Gordon, man, where you been? Where you at, son? You pissed me off in that bowl game, man. You were trash talking. You were in your zone, in your swag that whole game. He was my Heisman pick this year, and I had Oklahoma State winning the Big 12 and making the playoff, and they've disappointed me because they should have lost to Arkansas. Where are they? Where's Ollie Gordon? They're leaning on Bowman, who's I don't think he's particularly good, but they're just like a pass heavy offense now all of a sudden because they have no running game. It's been a shock to me, man. And I think their defense has been fine besides the Arkansas game, which is a testament to what Arkansas can do and on the road. I think they still have time to get it together. Big game this weekend for them at Kansas State. Both one loss Big 12 teams that have somewhat disappointed on the year. We'll have to see what happens there. It's a pretty important game, kind of along the lines of the the A&M Arkansas game, and then the scaled down version of the Georgia Alabama game. So big game for Oklahoma State this weekend.
Yeah, I mean, the Big 12 in general this year is a lot of fun. It's like a weight class below. It's like, a lower weight class, but a lot of fun games. I mean,
For sure.
Colorado, Baylor, it's like it's a whole different sport basically, I would say. It's like the Wild West of college football, and I like it. It's got good fan support. A lot of teams that Texas used to play pretty often. So yeah, so
UCF's a fun team right now.
yeah, UCF, Cincinnati's blowing everyone out apparently, and yeah, I mean, it's just a lot of team. BYU looked great against Kansas State, so it's just a deep conference.
I'm
Iowa
liking
State,
I'm liking the Big 12. They're scrappy.
yeah, no, they definitely are scrappy. So
Yeah.
cool, but all right, Drew. Well, anything else on your mind, or do we want to close this out here?
Nah, man, it's what do you call it? A gut, not really a gut check, but just like a crossroads kind of a weekend for some teams. I think over the next few weeks you'll get these matchups over and over and over again, just separating the teams that will be and the teams that won't be. I mean, I think if A&M loses this game, I don't think the upper echelon, hopes for the season are really still on the table. You could still probably have a decent year for a year one, but if you're wanting to get to that 9-win marker that we're really hoping for, 9+ win, if that's on the table, you got to win this game. Like you said, Georgia has some tough hurdles coming up. Bama has a really brutal stretch down the brutal stretch down the stretch of the year. They go at Tennessee, home versus Missouri, at LSU, 4 weeks back to back to back, 3 weeks back to back to back. Before that, they have South Carolina. Then they end at OU and versus Auburn. I mean, could be two weird games. So important games this weekend, man. It should be a lot of fun.
Yeah, and that's so true about what you said about A&M. Like they don't win this game, it looks a lot tougher to get to 9 wins, but honestly, 9 wins in year one for Mike Elko, even 8 or 7 is more than okay, I think,
It's
because
acceptable for sure.
right, it's year one, and I know people will say it's the portal era now. There's no excuse to not be good in year one, but I mean, Sark came in here and with a lot of Herman talent, a lot of 4 and 5 stars too, kind of like Elko inherited. And we went 5 and 7 year one. And I mean, it takes time to build a program and build a culture. So I think, I mean, if it does go south, which I don't think it will, I think Elko's doing a good job. That, just be patient and try to keep a level head because it takes a little bit to build
Yeah,
your
I
program.
will. I can't speak for some other Aggies you'll interact with on Twitter. They might be a little bit feisty with you if you start getting after them, and we're losing games. But I think you lose this game, you're looking at a 7-8 win year, and we would the thing we would really want is a 9-win year after a bowl game. But right now, we're hoping for a 10-win year after a bowl game. That's on the table. Everything's on the table right now, but there's some games coming up. We don't know if we're going to win, so got to get the one you can, and I think Arkansas is one of those.
Yeah, 'cause you'll have a built-in loss at the end of the year against Texas. So you got to get them
Do
when you
we?
can.
Do
No,
we?
no, we
Bookmarked.
don't. No, we don't.
Bookmarked.
No, we don't. I know that's the scary
Bookmarked.
thing about rivalries. So I'm not confident, even though we look so good.
You might want Arkansas to kind of fall off a cliff too, because you go to Vietnam and they have some stuff to play for. They're at like the 6-win marker. For them, they're still alive. They're going to want to
Yeah,
get you. And like I said, that's a kind of team that can turn it on and get it together for a game under Petrino and really just make things happen. They have the playmakers.
yeah, those are not give me's at all, and Vanderbilt too. I mean,
That's true. I'm not even like I was joking about that preseason. At Vandy, you got to be on your game, man. I mean, you did it versus Michigan, but just be on your game on the road versus Vandy. Right now, they're looking pretty good.
yeah. So we'll learn a lot. October should really heat up, and here this weekend too. So, all right, Drew, thanks for joining me. If y'all don't know, his YouTube channel is DrewTAMU, TAMU. He's also on Twitter, so go give him a follow. He's the real deal, especially after A&M loses and he goes and gives the immediate reaction. That's must-watch content from a Longhorn fan. He's pretty level-headed though. You're not gonna get him raging or anything, but it's still fun to watch. So he's got good stuff. Calling shows pretty often, so give him a call and bust his what a little bit about the Aggies every now and then. So. All right, guys. Well, thank y'all for watching. If y'all made it this far, please subscribe and like and comment. Give us some love in the chat if y'all can. Uh, if y'all enjoyed this format where we just talk about football more generally, like the landscape of college football, leave us a comment. Maybe we'll try to do this more often. But yeah. Any last thoughts, Drew?
No, it was a good idea to do it the week y'all are playing and executing Mississippi State. I think Brian Kelly will have his attention on this execution here because he seems to like those. So it'll be fun. It was a good idea to do this. I like the show. That was fun.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, guys. Thank y'all for watching. We'll see y'all next one.
All right.
Peace.
Later.